Anybody can have strong and occasionally severe effects from their mental health. But how much of this really explains David Katz's horrific behavior? He would attempt the unimaginable in August of 2018 by taking the lives of 12 additional gamers. However, why did he do what he did? What hardships did David keep hidden from others? And what was the cause of his awful past? On August 26, 2018, at 1:30 p.m., David Katz, 24, who goes by Brett in the gaming community, entered the Good Luck Have Fun game bar, which is housed inside the Chicago Pizza Store at Jacksonville's Landing in downtown Jacksonville, Florida. He was thinking of only one thing: murder. A motive was never provided for the occurrence, which shocked both the gaming community and the general public. Many people are still baffled by what happened that day. However, in this video, we'll delve deeply into David Katz's past and examine some of the events that transpired before August 26, 2018, which might provide some answers to those questions. David Katz, born on December 22, 1993, to Richard and Elizabeth Katz, was believed to have had a happy and loving childhood. It is believed that he and his elder brother Brandon led prosperous lives in Baltimore, Maryland. Not surprising, as Elizabeth worked for the FDA as a toxicologist and Richard had been an engineer for NASA. Although not much is known about David's early years, we'll presume that the four members of the family had rather typical lifestyles. When possible, the parents would go to work, the kids would go to school, and they would spend time together on family outings. But after 12 years, that was all the result of transformation. Richard filed for divorce from Elizabeth in 2005, after a severe argument between the two stemmed from claims that Elizabeth had cheated and been verbally abusive. The neighbors were shown the ugly dispute. One of them stated that they went through a really nasty divorce approximately 10 years ago, and that's why the police were always coming over here. All in all, the family was incredibly dysfunctional. Police were summoned to the family home 26 times between 2003 and 2009. The causes? Calls for sexual offenses, health crises, welfare inquiries, general police information, domestic situations, problems relating to mental illness, civil litigation, runaways of children, and police support. Thus, the marriage was going through a difficult time, and while the argument first centered on accusations of infidelity and violence, it ultimately devolved into a contentious debate about the respective parenting styles and how each handled the mental health of the kids. You know, it's believed that David and Brandon both experienced mental health problems after their initial breakup. David, the latter, would occasionally ball himself up and refuse to go to school. Elizabeth made the decision that seeing a psychiatrist was necessary. An antipsychotic medication used to treat schizophrenia was prescribed to David. Thus, we can presume that the person who first saw David had provided him with this diagnosis. A few details that were noticed to support this diagnosis included reports of David's compulsive video game playing as a young adolescent, his frequent stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning, and his refusal to take a shower or go to school. He'd go days without washing his hair, and he'd be seen walking in circles around the house when Elizabeth took away his video games. Oh, it would occasionally become violent. She once shut the door to her bedroom and left the controllers there. After then, David punched a hole in the door to get them back. Richard, on the other hand, claimed that Elizabeth was giving the kids dangerously high-risk medication and that she was lying to mental health professionals, leading him to reject the possibility that his son had schizophrenia. "He seems to be always aware of reality," Richard shot back. "Elizabeth doesn't present any proof that either child has schizophrenia, despite the fact that David was going through a mental crisis at the time, according to therapists. David would be admitted to psychiatric hospitals 6 times during his childhood, and he would stay for 97 days at one facility in Utah. That time, Elizabeth asserted that David was approaching a possible schizophrenia break and was in a desperate situation. David was diagnosed with dysthymia, a chronic low-grade depression and oppositional disorder without specific diagnosis in Utah, independent of his mother's influence. It appears that, while David suffered from mental health issues, schizophrenia may not have been one of them. When the divorce was eventually finalized in 2007, Elizabeth was granted custody of the kids while David was permitted visitation rights. This is why the police were summoned to the residence so frequently. But when David turned 18, that was different. He desired to leave. He asked the judge to let him live with his father and conveyed his hatred for his mother in a letter to the judge overseeing the case. "There is nothing in this world I detest more than her. She is everything that I detest. She has struck me in the past and always takes away my belongings. At my mom's, I never have enough food, but at my dad's, I always have plenty to eat." After the ensuing hearings, David would end up under his father's supervision. Thus, David eventually achieved his goal. He didn't live with his mother. At last, he would not have to attend the incessant meetings on medicine. He detested those and certain medications that he wasn't sure he wanted to take. Now, he was free from having to. Life was wonderful, but David never really settled down throughout his time at school. Not really, because he had to frequent several mental health facilities over the years. He was characterized as quiet and, as one student put it, a bit of a weirdo during his final few years of attendance. Although it's unknown if David had a close circle of friends, Zachary Kosher is at least one who is known to have spoken well about him. David, for example, claimed he would exude melancholy, yet we still loved each other's company. David and I mostly talked about video games and his dream of being a professional gamer in the future. He was an avid gamer, and that's what he would eventually go on to do for a living. For the next few years, specifics remain murky, but we do know that David became increasingly enthused about one game in particular, Madden NFL from EA Sports, a video game featuring American football that bears John Madden's name, the Hall of Fame coach and pundit. One local gamer said that David occasionally went to a weekly game night at a sports bar close to M&T Bank Stadium, which was related to Madden events. However, at that point, gaming wasn't making much money, and it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that his father, a NASA engineer, wanted his son to pursue his own interests. It was going to be up to him to steer his son in the proper direction. It would also represent a victory over Elizabeth, if anything. Eventually, 3 years after graduation, in 2014, David enrolled at the University of Maryland. While he majored in environmental science and technology, his graduation is unknown. Although the duration of his attendance at the university is unknown, it can be inferred from available sources that he continued to attend as of the 2017-2018 academic year. Still, it's believed that he did not register for the 2018 spring semester. Stanford University students engaged in competition on October 19, 1972, using the space combat video game Space War, which had been created 10 years before. It comprises two player-controlled spacecraft, the Needle and the Wedge. Shooting each other down in a dogfight is the game's objective. Bruce Bamgard emerged victorious in the event that autumn day, taking home a year's worth of Rolling Stone subscription. In actuality, though, he accomplished the greatest feat of all. He had emerged victorious from the inaugural esports championship, which would serve as a model for a future multi-billion-dollar industry. Esports in the 21st century resembles something like this. This is somewhat absurd. Ever since the inaugural esports competition in the 1970s, we have advanced significantly. Look at us right now. By turning on a PC or game console, young people can sit at home and become some of the wealthiest individuals on the planet. You can establish a name for yourself in the scene and earn some respectable cash, even if you're not among the top. When it comes to esports, Madden has always been a fan favorite. Even while the contests don't place in the top 10 most watched esports events, there is still a devoted fan base and a sizable cash award for the winners. I won't delve into the specifics of how Madden tournaments operate, but to put it simply, there are several rounds that you must go through in order to advance to the grand finale. There are cash awards in some of the stages that precede the final. It was time for David to finally participate in a Madden tournament after making a name for himself online in 2015 and 2016 under the moniker Sliced Bread. In 2016, he did just that for Madden 17. David would make it through several early rounds and even win at one of the more prominently broadcasted events.
The Buffalo Bills recently crowned their first ever Madden Club Series champion when 8 finalists competed for a $10,000 prize pool in a live broadcast event here at 716 Food and Sport.
The competition is really unbelievable because these guys, it's an investment for them. I mean, they've had to work and qualify to get to an event like this. There's only 8 guys that made it here, so it's a commitment. There's no question about it.
It's a way to help grow the game. to grow the fan base, not just for us, but for the NFL as well. We work so closely together, and it just made sense.
I think it's pretty cool. Like, the environment's nice. I like this place. I've never been here before either. It's a good choice.
It's hard to beat 716 because it's so comfortable. Live action, and you got the huge screen. People waiting on you. You get food and drink and relax and watch these guys compete. And you can actually get to see the guys playing.
It looks great. I'm kind of shocked with it being a projector that it's that high def. Yeah, it's impressive.
It's been really entertaining to see them. Like, I play Madden just for fun, and they're a lot better than I am doing things that I've never seen before, so it's pretty cool to watch.
They're highly expert. It's interesting to hear their vocabulary and their depth of knowledge about what makes the game tick. So it does have its own appeal, no question.
At the end of this season, we'll have a tournament of champions. The winner from each club event, they'll go into a final tournament. It's $50,000 for the winner.
Go!
That last game, the last few minutes it was just one of the craziest games I've played, really nerve-wracking. I did think that I probably lost it when I didn't get that fourth down, but was able to get a stop and got a lucky play at the end.
Oh my goodness, the young man from Columbia, Maryland, the last play of the game, and he gets it done.
The goal at the beginning of the year was to get to the final tournament and one step closer.
I think the industry is going to grow by leaps and bounds. You're going to see more and more events around the country, and they're going to get more and more coverage.
We want to help establish the players, to build their persona, to help them market themselves so that they can help us grow the sport.
If somebody can make a buck off of it and it's got that much interest, there's no question it's a growing sport.
David didn't appear to make it to the main finale, despite taking home $10,000. His name isn't on the list. He would be at his most comfortable during tournaments, but he was characterized as socially uncomfortable and introverted. He didn't engage in what could be called a typical manner with his fellow players. He was nevertheless successful, and in contrast to the great majority of others, one of the chosen few who might be considered a top player. Despite being one of the best, he performed worse than others when competing on the greatest stages of the corresponding events. Some therefore concluded that David had turned into a bully's easy prey. There have been reports claiming that he was called derogatory names. This would have been written off as trash talk if he had been a somewhat better player and more gregarious, but it seems to have gotten under his skin. But keep in mind that is all but conjecture. One reported incident occurred at a Madden event in Las Vegas, according to a court record dated late 2019. According to rumors, David tried to board a cab with another player, Eli Clayton, also known as True Boy. But Eli didn't feel comfortable riding with someone, so David's request to board was turned down. David was alleged to be blatantly ridiculous and to have threatened Eli. He would then submit the issue to EA, but it doesn't appear like anything ever came of it. The Landing, a once thriving and well-liked shopping, dining, and tourism destination, is situated in downtown Jacksonville. However, the Landing would begin to suffer from a negative reputation in 2012 as a result of a few instances that left individuals dead. There had been several fights at a country music event at the Landing in August of 2012. Following the altercation, Evans Taylor, 22, was run over and killed. However, 26-year-old Greg Johnson was later found not guilty of murder. 2 months later, 2 football fans were involved in another fatal incident. Chris Petrie, a father of 3, had driven from Chicago to Jacksonville to watch the Bears take on the Jaguars. But he would never be able to attend the game. Chris would go to a pub within the Landing and start talking to Matthew Hinson's wife. Enraged by jealousy, Matthew approached him, took a knife out of his pocket, cut Chris's throat, and left the area. Chris would immediately pass away, and Matthew received a life sentence after admitting to second-degree murder. The once thriving venue's reputation was restored after the 2 accidents happened quickly after each other. But only 5 years later, another fatal occurrence had place. 2 teenage boys, ages 13 and 16, were shot in an alleyway inside the Landing in January 2017. The shooting would claim the life of 16-year-old Kamui Peterson, while the 13-year-old would escape unharmed. Tyreek Solomon, then 18, ultimately received a 2-year probationary sentence as part of an agreement with the prosecution. He entered a guilty plea to a felony charge of carrying a hidden firearm, sparing him from going to jail. On the grounds of self-defense, he was found not guilty of murder. As you can see, the Landing had developed a reputation for violence based only on these 3 occurrences. In spite of this, EA decided to hold a Madden 19 regional qualifier there. One particular spot would be the game bar called Good Luck Have Fun, which is located behind Chicago Pizza. The tiny, claustrophobic area wouldn't seem like the typical location for an esports competition. Officials reportedly observed that the venue was too small and unsuitable for this kind of competition. People couldn't quite figure out how the space was selected. In any case, the competition moved forward. Everyone had to fulfill their obligations, and the preliminary matches started. Pro athletes such as David Eli Clayton, also known as True Boy, and Taylor Robertson, also known as Spot Me Please, were present and competing against each other to secure the regional prize money and advance in the competition. All three would go past the preliminary rounds, and by the time Sunday, August 26th arrived, the competition had really begun. David would be eliminated from the event at approximately 11:45 a.m., although he stayed at first. According to reports, he ultimately left and started roaming Chicago Pizza, asking people where specific gamers were. It's unclear if he left the gaming event to head to his car, where he had spent the previous night sleeping, but the catastrophe would strike the gaming event almost 2 hours later.
Good morning, everybody. It is our big story on Fox 4 Morning News at 6. The shooting at a video game competition in Jacksonville now has gamers calling for more security at their tournaments.
Well, that shooting killed 3 people, including the gunman. And we do have some team coverage with multiple crews. They're live in Jacksonville as well as here in Southwest Florida.
And first, we're going to get to those reporters in just a couple of minutes. We're covering every aspect of this story, not only in those 2 locations in Florida, but also in Baltimore as well this morning.
That's right. Let's go to Camila Bernal. She is live in Baltimore with the very latest.
Gamers here in Jacksonville, Florida were in a virtual world when all of a sudden a mass shooting became their reality. Some people ducked, others took cover, while others just ran as far as they could to avoid getting hurt. But unfortunately, not everyone was able to escape.
We have got to change. We've got to really stop and say to ourselves, there's something wrong.
2 people were killed in another mass shooting in Florida. This time at an online gaming tournament in Jacksonville. Participants from all over the country had gathered in a pizza restaurant Sunday afternoon to compete in a Madden NFL tournament at Jacksonville's Landing Complex. That's where police say 24-year-old David Katz, a gamer from Baltimore, Maryland, opened fire. Crowds of people scattered in all directions, trying to get to safety in the populated outdoor marketplace.
I just heard sound like gunfire, and the next thing I know, I see some people coming out of Hooters. And they were kind of falling.
Almost a dozen others were injured by bullets or while trying to flee.
There were 9 victims transported by JFRD to area hospitals. 7 of those had gunshot wounds. I'm happy to report that they are all in stable condition at this time.
The FBI searched the suspect's home in Baltimore, hoping to find some clues as to why Katz committed this horrible act.
This is a horrible day. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, we have to grieve for individuals that senselessly lost their lives.
And just to recap, it is 2 dead and 11 injured, 11 that were taken to local hospitals and that the sheriff says are in stable condition. Now, area streets here have reopened to the public. Of course, that restaurant remains closed. Sheriff deputies are still in the area and just trying to figure out exactly what happened. Reporting live in Jacksonville, Florida, I'm Camila Bernal. Now back to you.
Camila, thank you. And crews at our sister station in Baltimore tell us ATF agents have been searching the family's home of the shooting suspect, David Katz.
Let's get right to Chanel Perriman. She is there this morning with what we have just found out about the suspect.
FBI and ATF agents here in Baltimore are assisting in the investigation, and they were seen coming in and out of a townhome in this South Baltimore neighborhood for several hours. According to property records, the townhome they were searching is owned by Richard Katz. Neighbors say he is the father of the gunman, 24-year-old David Katz. He lives on Harbor Island Walk, right off a key highway, not too far from the Inner Harbor. Now, neighbors say they didn't know the family too well. The people living right next door say they never saw any red flags. And another neighbor saying the father is a really good guy, but they didn't know the gunman and only saw him on occasion.
Wow, I've seen this guy somewhere, but I didn't really know him personally. I feel sorry to his family and parents.
They are pretty quiet. They keep to themselves. I see them coming and going from the house, and we say hi to each other, but other than that, don't know too much about them.
Eli Clayton was playing his favorite game, Madden, when David Katz, equipped with a 9mm handgun, fired 12 shots inside the gaming bar. At that moment, Livestream picked up the red laser on Clayton's chest. 12 rounds later, David had killed Eli and Taylor and wounded 11 more. Then he made the decision to end his own life. Following the shooting, all Madden qualifying events were canceled in the near future. EA gave the families of Taylor and Eli $1 million. Although Eli was rumored to not even be going to this event, he suddenly made the decision to go. By December, qualifying had resumed, albeit with a significant police presence. That year, several players honored both victims with their victories, and in the end, Pavan Lakat, also known as Pavon, would take first place. The loss deeply affected the gaming community, particularly the Madden players. How could a man, enraged over a game, kill innocent people who were merely attempting to better their lot in life? Most people agree that this was the motivation. David chose to randomly vent his resentment at gamers after realizing he had lost. However, as I dug deeper into this case, important details started to emerge that suggest a different motivation. Had David indeed been enrolled at the University of Maryland until the spring term, would he have believed that this was a make-or-break situation? He would end his own life and bring a few more down with him if he had lost. There isn't enough information in the public domain about the year he left the university, so we can't say for sure if that is the case. They only claim that he was not registered for the spring semester of that year. However, other attendees felt that the shooting was targeted. Was it a conspiracy of retaliation for the Las Vegas taxi tragedy that happened a few years earlier? Or perhaps it was a mix of the two. It still wouldn't be okay to kill an innocent person because they refused to get in a taxi with them, even if that were the case. Again, no official motive has been stated. However, it should be noted that this explanation ignores the fact that Taylor Robertson was also a target, and that 10 additional persons were shot within the venue.
Thanks. I am here with True and Problem. True, you got the win. You're moving on. You are still poised, and you have it all together. How do you feel?
I feel great. I mean, I feel like the monkey's off my back. I finally, show people what I can do. And I got more games to play. I had a lot to prove still.
Yeah, and that move last in the 4th and 7. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I was going to hit the low ball to the left, but I saw him user peel off to the middle, and I just hit it right in the crease, and it just worked out.
It definitely gave you the win.
Let's present the belt to the champ.
No, I mean, this is the first major, phenomenal first showing, phenomenal tournament. We saw every great aspect of Madden here, offense, defense, etc. Taylor, your defense carried you this time. You fought through a ladder of millions of players. You deserve this belt. Carry this home to your wife and kid as the first ever Madden Classic champion.
In the middle of your game, when you heard something that turned out to be shots, and when you heard that, what went through your mind?
I mean, I actually think you can hear my voice on there. I asked, "What do you shoot me with?" It's my first reaction. I heard the shots and I thought, "Why is there firecrackers in here?" And then I actually got hit, and I'd never been shot before, so I didn't know what to think. And then I turned around and actually, saw the flashes from the gun, and at that point, it just went into, survival mode, and I just wanted to make sure I was out of there.
And did you see the shooter? And if so, did you recognize him?
I saw his silhouette. I could see his hair, but his face, he was holding the gun up, and the flashes were kind of covering his face because he was just letting them rip. And then again, once I saw the flashes, I didn't want to stick around to try to ID him, so I hit the floor and tried to find cover wherever I could. I feel like I was a lucky one. There's 2 guys, and I'm never going to get to shake their hand at a tournament again. And I'm in a hospital room next to my buddy who's, he's got 2 bullets in his chest, and they said they're probably never going to be able to get him out again. And he's doing good, but it really breaks my heart to see guys that I care about as much as I do, hurting and to see their families grieving, and it's really something that I don't want anybody to ever have to deal with.